Om, boom. Om, God alone exists, God alone is reality. Om, God alone exists, God alone is reality. Om, God alone exists, God alone is reality. Om, Om, Om. 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 Om, amplifying radiance. Om, amplifying radiance. Om, is there hearing the transmission? Om? Om, is there hearing the transmission? Om? Om. Om. God in the happening of the 10th Satyavatara Satsangha. Om. Is occurring. Om. Some meta information. There were some technical difficulties resuming the live streams, the Satsanghas, but that was rectified. And now, in eternity, there is usage of God in the form of Facebook Direct for the Satsanghas, and because of technical difficulties of other software. And the resolution seems to be clear enough, but that remains to be seen whether that will continue to manifest. Om. So with this ability, there is a new ability seemingly that this application, direct Facebook application, got in the form of had, and then that ability there were technical difficulties with the GIFO Facebook app, the ability to add, to call in, video call in, so there can be God transmitting and receiving in video form, because the other God in the happening of Satsanghas were audio form, with the avatar being the video presence transmitted, and the queries were in audio form and in comment form. So now there is the ability for commenting and for calling in video form. So this is God in the happening of an experiment to see how successful this can be. Om. So there are certain transmissions that need to occur, and then there may or may not be going to video inquiries. So it is spontaneous, and this is God's spontaneity. See how this happens. Om. So the LSSVs, which are the live stream teachings, the more seeming formal teachings, are to resume in a few days in eternity. So everything is resuming and up and running. God manifesting, transmitting and receiving. Om. Om, om, om. 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 So this is seeming resuming in God eternity. Om. Of course, it's all spontaneously happening now, always, everywhere. That is how all happenings occur. Om. No plans, no past, no future, none of that. Om. So this is the seeming resumption, apparently, in fiction. Om. Oh, welcome, welcome. Welcome to myself. Myself welcoming myself. God speaking to God about God, always. Since the health concerns that have been occurring, and this avatar did not feel the need to address that, because God in the form of myself in so many bodies have been addressing this phenomenon. So there is God blessing and God manifesting that all of the bodies remain in form and continue to have apparent primary body health. Health of the bodies and care of the bodies. God blessings upon all parent forms. All multi-species forms. God in the form of all multi-species forms. Parent bodies. God blessings and God auspiciousness. That God in the form of all of those bodies stay in form. That those bodies be healthy. That those bodies get the sustenance that is needed and the care that is needed during the happenings and the eventings that are occurring, that are necessary. It's all God will. There may be the appearance of those that perhaps do not understand why these eventings must occur, and the seeming devastation that is occurring in the God manifestation. God blessings. May the bodies, God in the form of those bodies, get the sustenance that is necessary. Get the medical attention that is necessary. May that medical attention, if necessary, be auspiciously timed in eternity to be exact in God's spontaneous synchro-eventing. May the God in the form of the bodies be protected. What is occurring with this seeming epidemic has apparently is spreading in various ways in different seeming lands on the Gifo planet. that are all one. And there's been some dissipation in the location where the avatar resides. But there are other locations in God Infinity where there is acceleration and an epidemic. Exponential epidemic. So there must be heeding the instructions that God in the form of myself in apparent bodies that are who in the job descriptions in fiction are transmitting, relaying for the care and safety of all the apparent bodies. So those instructions should be listened to very carefully and performed for the best apparent outcome. Now it is, as with all of the Satsanghas, there is the having to speak God truth always, that you are not the apparent body. So although there is fear because there's identification, there are many in fiction that the emotions are fear, and there are many other emotions that are occurring. There's criticism and hostility, great tension, arguing, fighting, tearing one another down, seemingly in fiction, great stress that is occurring, that is not conducive to health, and is not conducive to the best outcome of the situationing that is occurring. But it is not surprising, of course, because there is an awakening that is occurring, and there's a lot of purging of toxicity. So the toxicity is manifesting that has not manifested apparently as openly as is occurring now. So all of this has been a convergence of various struggling that it is all reaching a point of convergence where all of it's being pushed up and becoming very visible. So in some of the previous teachings and assignments in the Satsanghas concerned criticism and what would be called non-criticism, certain practices about how to seemingly restrain oneself from getting into arguments and criticizing others in God in the form of apparent bodies, criticizing others, fighting, group mentality of us versus them, etc. And those teachings should have been practiced, especially that these teachings should have been very helpful, considering the circumstances in the interim, in eternity, that while the health seeming emergency and the other seeming events that are now being addressed, the seeming injustices in fiction, primarily due to divisiveness and the not understanding of the oneness of all. All the seeming groups, all the seeming divisions that are not real, and all the fighting that is going on, apparently. And all of it stems from the core cause, which is not knowing oneself. The majority of seeming humans do not know what they are. So it is getting more divisive, more hostility, more arguing, more blaming, more tearing down. What is called now in fiction cancel culture. So if that continues, then there'll be nothing left to cancel. And this all is because there is no real understanding of the unity, not even the unity, the oneness of all. That is why this is a dream. This is the dream of humanity. We're all casting around in the dream, not knowing what to do, because their seeming fixed world is now in chaos. And most were not ready for that. That is why there is the continuing of the awakening, which is the God evolution and the God transcension. So it may not appear to be all love and light, because it is not. Evolution is not usually easy, seemingly. But there is not going to be a real answer to these seeming problems if there is not an understanding of what one is. There'll just be more dividing into groups and splintering into body colors and interests and various ways to break reality up, the reality that cannot be broken up. God reality is one. The apparent body is God omniverse. It is not a piece of the omniverse. It is God whole omniverse. Just as there is no drop that's floating around in the ocean, there's just the ocean. And you are not even the apparent body, but there is the whole unity of the bodies, the oneness of the bodies as God omniverse, the multiverse, Om, God multiverse, Om, God manifestation, the one and only within God absolute, Om. So the answer is not political. It's not fiction. The answer to what perhaps might be frightening or worrying is not politics in fiction. It's fiction in fiction land, in the dream, in the fictional dream, in what Satya speaks of as the cult of humanity, Om. The dream of humanity, Om. So there is in this awakening, that is yet another level of God evolution. That there is the seeming ability to, quote, wake up out of this dream. And there has been the ability, because of many bodies having been sequestered, that there was being able to see more of what was occurring than being mesmerized by the usual phenomenon that in the hypnotism is like the mechanical, normal scheduling. So the scheduling has been disrupted, and there is the ability to perhaps wake up into another level of the dreaming that might be a higher level, to be able to try to understand what is occurring, but it is still within the dreaming. So as always in God eternity, Satya is speaking God truth to invite within the dreaming for there to be the true awakening, which is that you are not asleep. You, as God, you, the one identity that is true, that is not the body, that you are quite awake. But you, the small you, the you that most think as you, as in thinking about you as a person, are. The small u is identified with the body occurrence, the thoughts, which is the pseudo-egoing, which is an activity in God consciousness, a continuous activity in God consciousness that activity can be disrupted. So this is speaking about a disruption of reality that is transcendent, not a disruption within the fiction dream that would be disrupting the scheduling of the bodies. This is a transcendent disruption. So these teachings are always a transcendent disruption. And this seeming digital representation of live streaming of the avatar is always a breaking into the dreaming to give, to transmit God truth directly to God consciousness and God absolute. God speaking to God about God directly. So the solutions to the seeming problems are not going to be through politics. They're not going to be through regular fiction, irregular fiction. They're certainly not going to be through fighting. There is no fighting to obtain peace. There is already God peace. There just has to be realizing it. And then there can be physical peace, apparent body peace. As a result, so the teaching is, this teaching has fluidly led up to, as an extension of non-criticism, that, again, there cannot be fighting for peace, because that is what many bodies want. Many bodies want peace and happiness. And there are many that are fighting for the right to be happy, to have peace of mind. Fighting for the right to be happy, basically, in the dream. So one cannot fight for peace. One already is peace. So there has to be seemingly finding that peace. And that peace is not external. There is nothing. That's why there is all of this grasping for, this longing, this always the next way to be happy, the next experience, the next seeming thing in fiction land to gratify, to temporarily in eternity cause seemingly a feeling of radiance or joy, but that ends up being ephemeral. So it comes and goes, and for many it is not even a normal reoccurring eventing. So especially with the eventings that are occurring that are seemingly disruptive, that are causing awakening to other levels within the dreaming. But some of that activity is happening, it's causing a lot of much delusion. Because there's a lot of conspiracy theory fiction that is occurring as well. That along with all the fighting and fear, that there's conspiracy and there is much suspiciousness occurring as well. All of these emotions, all of these thoughts. So there is not only the particular illness that the pandemic, but there are many multiple illnesses that are being exacerbated by the circumstances. Quite extremely. So there needs to be spreading of the God truth information. Of course, to counteract So it is very God auspicious what is occurring, even though it may seem and look to be very dark, quote unquote. It is very auspicious, and it is the God evolution. Because there has to be purging of all this toxicity. It needs to occur. It is being brought to the surface of seeming God consciousness to be observed. It needs to be seen. It would be akin to, analogously to saying that hate speech needs to be, that there needs to be absolute freedom of speech, because such speech as hate speech needs to be heard, not suppressed. It needs to be heard so that it is seen and known that it exists, so that it can be cured. All of these maladies, all of this sickness. So not just what is considered a virus, God in the form of, because God is in the form of all. Not just God in the form of a virus, but God in the form of all of the thought viruses. There's nothing against viruses in particular, but it is God in the form of all the speech viruses. God in the form of all the emotional viruses. All of that needs to be manifest. It needs to be seen so that it can be healed. So this is beneficial, because in order for there to be evolution, this has to be unveiled. So there is no fighting for peace. But the way in which this is being manifest is that there is fighting and casting around, because there seems to be there has not been taught other ways. God in the form of the cult of humanity. If there were a way to wipe all the seeming minds all at once, like wiping a computer, rebooting, reformatting the whole God in the form of the cult of humanity hard drive, of all of the fiction that has been passed down endlessly, seemingly in the dreaming of generations that do not really exist, because there is no past. It's all happening all at once, spontaneously, simultaneously, all at once, spontaneously, at once, always, in God eternity. and then to re-educate or educate with truth content and with ways to navigate apparent primary bodies, to navigate reality. In the natural, healthy way that the seeming apparent bodies were born with when first appearance into the God in the form of this world, before any programming occurred. Although there is some programming that occurs within the seeming wombs of the apparent bodies, even there, but the clean seeming slate, the pureness of thought content, before all of the fiction education starts to be fed and absorbed and take effect. That's why there are seemingly some that in the dream that do not feel that they belong to this world. They do not know why they are here in the dream. They do not understand why they were born into a world like this, seemingly. And even that is because they do not understand that there is a way to break out of the cult of humanity's programming and to declare oneself no longer human, because that you are not human. You are not. You are not a form. Therefore, you are not human. So there would be the breaking out of all of the programming that makes one believe one is human, or that makes one believe that, and by one, that is God one, oneself, that makes oneself believe one is human, that makes oneself believe that all others are various forms or various species and different from oneself. So there has to be an evolution of education. So if there were a way to wipe all of the minds of seemingly the cult of humanity and apparent formations, then there could be re-educating, which is educating with actual truth reality content. But that is not what is occurring. So the God evolution continues as it continues. But there must be education as to what you are. And it has to be pervasive. It has to be en masse. It has to become universal knowledge. So, and this could go on and on and on, because that is the mission. The seeming hair that is now blue, it appears that way. This symbolizes the ocean. The ocean. God in the form of. So the avatar has oceanic hair in appearance. And the Swami name being Satya Samudrananda. Satya being truth, God truth. And Samudra being ocean, the ocean of God truth. So the avatar has been commanded by God through this transmission. And the God vision has been is commanded. There are many missions that need to occur as God happenings in Satyavedism for the benefit of God in the form of the world. So there will appear to be advocacy for the saving of the God oceans on God in the form of the planet. Because the oceans, God in the form of the planet is comprised of mainly ocean in percentage. And there are many God in the form of seeming apparent multi-species within the ocean. And on the surface of the land of God in the form of this planet. So one of the missions is to save the oceans from being colonized incorrectly and from being polluted to the point where it would be irreversible. Of course, God in the form of the planet would continue, even though there has been illness of the planet, because God in the form of the planet is an apparent primary body as well. But what has been done seemingly so far in relativity to the apparent body of the planet is reversible. But there will be a point where it would not be for habitation of the seeming various God in the form of multi-species, including what are called humans. So of course there'll be mission. The mission is a God vision that there is going to be colonization of the oceans, and there is going to be colonization of other planets, other neighboring planets. God in the form of the. That is a goal of God in the form of humanity. So there are missions that the avatar has to serve. They're God happenings that are part of the God evolution. So there is a mission that has just begun that is related to some extent, seemingly. And that is the mission of liberating, God in the happening of liberating many multi-species on the God in the form of this planet. This has, in God consciousness, has had this seeming apparent God vision for what seems apparently in fiction very long in God eternity. And had not heeded the call on this macro level, this monumental level, although this body has performed many practices that are related, such as the body's being, having been vegetarian, what is called vegetarian as a practice, vegetarianing, veganing as a practice to reduce the amount of suffering that the various multi-species that are being used as food by God in the form of humans incur. But that is not enough. It is not enough, as the God vision has shown. So the live stream teaching, the next live stream teaching, LSSV 30, is to address this specifically in length, a lengthy teaching in God Eternity. But it is being touched upon here now. So the mission is God in the happening of universal liberation of what are called animals on God in the form of this earth. Now, the human seeming form could also be called an animal as well. It only seems to, in human supremacy, it only seems to distinguish between the human form and all of the rest of the inhabitants of God in the form of apparent primary bodies, all the rest of those bodies as being animals, the term being used loosely in a general way. But in that way, God in the form of humans are also seeming animals. But again, you are not human. You are not an animal. Those animals are not animals. That is what it appear as. Those are the labels that are used in language to make distinctions and to point to forms. So there needs to be liberation of many suffering bodies. There are not just human, God in the form of apparent human suffering bodies. And by suffering, what is being elucidated is the more so the pain aspect of the physical suffering that is occurring of many bodies that are labeled God in the form of animals, multi-species. However, those bodies also are afflicted by by what would be considered mental suffering as well, because of the treatment or the mistreatment of those bodies. So again, this is going to be gone into in detail in the next live stream teaching, the LSSV 30. But there is presenting this because there was an eventing, a God eventing that had occurred finally when the call of the avatar, this avatar, this world avatar, God in the form of, was spontaneously given the God sign that this was to occur now in eternity. Finally, now in eternity. So there has been the commencement of what is called God in the happening of. The International Animal Lives Matter movement. God in the happening of. International in relativity within the dream, within the human dreaming, that this phenomenon is now in effect. And this movement is apparently in the dream, in fiction, being led by the avatar, or founded, or whatever that appearance looks like in fiction. Because it is time now in eternity for this to occur. There has been enough chaos and disruption that has manifested for the God side to have been given that this is it. This is now. In eternity. So it has begun. It has commenced. There is God in the form of a website that has been created. There have been 2 God eventings that have occurred. There was one on Wednesday in eternity, and there was one on Saturday in eternity. And there is to be one this on Saturday, tomorrow in eternity, apparently. And there are to be many more in eternity. Because God in the form of the human, the cult of humanity, is to be put on notice that it can no longer mistreat and use and abuse as objects as things what are called God in the form of animals that are the majority of the seeming residents of God in the form of this planet. There has been God evolution, God intelligence technology that is now made this possible, especially now in eternity. It's made it possible for God in the form of the cult of humanity to not seemingly have to utilize animals in this way anymore. There are many, many, many ways to do much of what Gifo-seeming humans want to accomplish without having to use animals as objects and mistreat and seemingly kill and murder apparent bodies needlessly. There is so much that is to be said through this avatar, so much to be transmitted through this avatar as to the various ways in which God in the form of animals and God in the form of this planet have been mistreated, seemingly, but really basically unknowingly, unintentionally, and with no blame and criticism and hostility and shaming and all other sorts of adjectives for emotions that are basically sickness in the dreaming. All of that is unnecessary. God in the form of the Gifo humans are only evolving. So now the God in the form of the Gifo humans, seemingly in the dreaming, need to be informed that there is a level of evolution now where this is not necessary, and that there has to be a reversal of the damage that has been caused to God in the form of this planet. And all on this planet, and in this planet, all the apparent bodies, all the bodies, not just what are called sentient species bodies, seemingly, but all bodies. So what is occurring is, although it is in certain way termed a revolution, it is the God evolution. And it's bringing all sorts of seeming injustices to the surface in the dreaming. So anyway, the God vision is that this is occurring now, that these seeming missions of the Gifo avatar, that these transmissions are occurring through, are delivered to God in the form of the world, for the benefit of God Omni, all, for the benefit of all. So there is much more to be transmitted about these various missions. God in the form of God transmits the signs, the God signs, when these eventings are to occur, and then the eventings spontaneously begin or commence. That is what it's like. All of what happens is God's spontaneity. There has to be openness. When there is knowledge of oneself, there's the various ways in which this occurs. There's the self-realization of the direct knowledge of oneself, and then there's the God realization of God whole, and then there's the God omnipotence, which is the realization of God manifesting as God whole. Then there's God omniscience. There's the awareness of all. God omnipresence is God in the form. God as God absolute within all forms. Knowing all and all powerful. So the God visions occur when all of the clearing, what there seem to be in stages of realization of what one is already. And then there is the seeming education of what one is capable of as God whole. Not identifying as a person or a body that is all powerful, but as what seemingly is within the body and everywhere. So that is briefly what the seeming missions that are appearing, that are God manifesting, and that there is going to be more God transmission, God information about manifesting in God in the form of the world. So one of the assignments God absolute love. So the next assignment that is a continuation of the non-criticism, non-group mentality, this is backwards here. Yeah. Again, group mentality. This visual is below in the on the GIFO Facebook in the feed to refer to. This teaching is cardinal. There are many cardinal teachings, but this teaching is cardinal. It is a very primary, seminal teaching. The GIFO parent bodies should have this as that perhaps when there is more God manifesting of the GIFO NPO, there can be maybe the manufacturing of cards that can be laminated to carry as a reminder. So in continuing the various assignments that should have been practiced, and if not, refer back to the Satsanghas for implementation of those practices. Is to eliminate, so listen carefully, in God consciousness, because this should help, this should assist in all of the criticism and the fighting and the fear and the conflict and all the various adjectives that are illnesses that need to be cured. The assignment is to eliminate the word fight and fighting and all derivatives of fight and synonyms of fight, but specifically the word fight, from the working vocabulary. So, because the word fight is a linguistic tick. It's a linguistic tick in the language, in the world, God in the form of the world. There are various words that are used. There are various words that are used across cultures in fiction, in mainstream media in fiction, and various news sourcings and various groupings for manifesting all sorts of occurrences in God in the form of the world. And these linguistic usages of the words have been passed along as hearsay and as the education of the programming, the dream, the continuing programming, fictional programming. The word fight and fighting is being used, it has always sort of been used much in the hypnotization, because there's belief that one has to fight for things, that one has to fight for rights, that one has to fight others for what one needs. So there's just this hypnotism that has occurred, that is just a given, that there needs to be fighting for this and fighting for that. Stand up and fight for this. Because it cannot be attained, it cannot be gotten unless there is fighting for it, because it has to be difficult. Everything is difficult. Everything is difficult. So basically there's a word viruses going around, speaking of viruses, to use an analogy. Again, there's nothing against, this has nothing in particular against viruses. Viruses are God as well. Of course, there is the need in certain cases to have to, it's part of God happening. But what would be called a linguistic virus, word virus. So, And it hypnotizes in God consciousness. It hypnotizes. It's passed along like viruses. It replicates. It just replicates and replicates and replicates. Hearsay. Pass it along. Always. Instead of actually using language in order to express, instead of using language to repeat. So the word fight or fighting, etc. The first part of the assignment is just to witness, to listen. Listen. Just listen. Let there be receiving, God receiving of the information. Listen and witness how much usage of the word fight there is in the seemingly incoming receiving of information, like on God in the form of the news and all of that, and even like just seeming other apparent forms around in the vicinity. Witness how many times the word fight comes up, enters God consciousness seemingly. There is no inner and outer and all that and all that, but what feels or appears to be that way. Witness how pervasive it is, the usage of the word fight and fighting. Because there has to be witnessing of it in order then to start to cure it. So just listen. Do not start an argument about that some God in the form of seeming someone else is using the word fight and should stop. Just listen. Just witness. And that it'll become clear that there is much of that in the hypnotism, the linguistic hypnotism, the spell that is cast by the word fight. Fighting. You have to fight for your rights. You, as an individual, have to fight for your rights. All of that's fiction. You, as an individual, is fiction. Have to, must, is fiction. Fight is fiction. And your rights as an individual is fiction. This is all God. This is all one. It's a whole. Everything that is needed by the apparent body can be given by God. It is given by God if there was only awareness that it is right there to be gotten. This is truth. There can be God vision of something, seemingly an event, a seeming object, whatever it is. And if there is God vision, it appears seemingly miraculously, but it's not. It's not even miraculous, because that is just the way God manifests. There has to be God vision for it to be seen, for there to be awareness of that, of the way God manifests. So all of that is fiction. The individual having to fight for one's rights, having to fight others to get what one wants. That's how it seemingly works in the world. That's what it looks like. Because the mass hypnotism has programmed the God in the form of the seeming bodies to think that is just the way it is. That's how it is. So when there are seemingly injustices, there is the uprising to fight for one's rights, to fight for group rights, to fight for... This is God transmission in order for there to be understanding of the God vision picture of it, not down in the dream how that works. It doesn't... That is the programming that is manifesting that way because of the programming, of the ingestion of the programming. That's why it seems to work that way. But that is not the natural way that it works. There does not have to be fighting. So, listen to how much, witness how much of the usage of the word fight and fighting there is. Because true power, God power, is effortless. It's effortless. There does not have to be fighting for power. It does not have to fight for power. Power is, it's there, it's effortless. God power, God Shakti is there. It flows through everything. It is to be utilized with God vision. It is not, there is not effort in it. It just is. So that is true power, not what appears to be real power. This group has real power. No. And that group doesn't have power. No. There is God power in everything. God and Omni. True power. Just as there's true peace. But in the dreaming there's conflict. So witness the usage of the word fighting, and how it is hypnotizing. It hypnotizes. It casts a spell, and the spell is fighting. So the word for the pervasive usage of the word fighting is a sign of the fighting, and it is casting the spell for more fighting, more conflict. Not less, not toward peace. It is making more conflict. It is doing the exact opposite of what the intentions are. The intentions are that there should be peace and resolution, but it is casting the spell of fighting and conflict. It just creates more of itself. There must be carefulness with the usage of language, because words in God consciousness are spells. Spell, like the word spell, spelling. They're spells. They God manifest action if they are believed. So the assignment is to witness in God consciousness the usage of the word fighting and fighting, synonyms of fighting, synonyms of conflict, etc., and to see how pervasive that is. And then it is no wonder that there is so much, right? And then to stop manifesting that. There are other ways to there are other ways to express what needs are, seemingly, and what wants are. So then cease using the word fight. Cease using the word fighting. Use alternatives to the words that are not synonyms. Like, for instance, if there is a certain God in the form of a seeming cause, a God happening in God in the form of the world, then there should be linguistic usage to say that there is advocacy for such and such of God in the happening of a cause. That one should advocate for a certain cause or a certain eventing to occur. Not fight. Not fight. God manifesting in the true power is effortless. It is effortless, and it is intentional, aware God manifesting, not casting around in this dream seeking for something and not even knowing that how to manifest, and ended up manifesting the opposite of the intentions in the dreaming, because that is how the seeming God in the form of the world appears to be upside down, in reversal of what is. It's manifesting the opposite of seemingly what is wanted. Quite literally, it is manifesting the opposite of what is intended. But there is so much non-awareness of it that it is like constantly complaining about something. Just say, in the dreaming, there are seeming humans that are constantly complaining about something. So they're saying, and spend all the energy complaining about something. Complaining, commiserating, complaining. So that actually manifests what is the complaining. That manifests exactly what is not wanted. There has to be a transcendence of the complaint so that there's no longer any complaining, and then there's just action of what is really wanted, seemingly. So one cannot fight for peace. One cannot fight for happiness by the very nature of it. One cannot think constantly what the fiction content, if that content in God consciousness is just continuing to reconfigure over and over and over and over and over, then that is what is manifested. It's really that simple, but it's so hard to see by most. It's so hard to see. There's manifesting of the opposite of what one is intending. Manifesting conflict, manifesting fighting, not manifesting the resolution. There is no manifesting of the solution. There's just manifesting more of the seeming problem. And that's just in the fiction dreaming. On those levels. But what is the grand solution of it all is the transcension out of the dreaming. The realization, or realizations, seemingly. So the assignment, It's repeating like waves in the ocean. The assignment is that there be listening and witnessing the awareness, the usage of fighting, the word conflict. Fight for one's rights, fight for this, fight for that. Struggle and fight. Push that rock up the hill. Sisyphus, whatever, in mythology and fiction. Always have to be fighting. The fight that's handed down through generations. Yes, what seemingly in fiction, it's handed down. It's handed down because it continues to exist, because it's believed in. So cease using the word fight. This is only using it as a transmission to bring that sickness to the surface, seemingly, to be examined so that it can be eliminated. It can be transmuted. And it can be cured. The language usage has to be cured. It has to be cured. It has to be purified. Because it reconfigures in God consciousnit. There has to be awareness of the usage and the activation in God consciousness of language. If it is believed, it is hypnotic. It takes effect. It is God manifesting. Language is God manifesting when seen in the true light of God. Language is action. It is God action. It is not action that the speech. Speech is action. It's God action. God truth speech. Om. So there should be alternate ways to convey. There are alternate ways to God manifest through language. So there can be advocacy for such and such a seeming cause. And then when there is God manifesting toward eventings that should occur through to the God evolution to seemingly make better results in God in the form of the world, to effect change seemingly in God in the form of the world, positive change or positive God, evolution, or to all sorts of seeming causes that are necessary seemingly in God in the form of the world. But the attitude is all dreamingly wrong. That is not how to truly God manifest. There has to be clarity of intent. So the greatest seeming struggle is no longer a struggle. There can be great manifesting. There is, the God evolution will become exponential when the conflict and the struggle is taken out of God manifesting. There is so much that can be accomplished by God through God manifesting effortlessly, with clarity, with God vision. There is nothing that cannot be accomplished that way. Nothing. It's infinite, the God potentiality. when there is no longer the need to have to framework in the dream manifesting in such a negative fashion. It is so needless. It is so needless. There's so much God manifesting that can be done without contextualizing it as fighting. Do not need to fight. All that is needed already exists. This is God abundance. If there are feelings of not having enough or having scarcity, all there needs to be is transcending that belief. And it will become obvious how God abundant this God omniverse truly is. The things and the needs will seemingly come to the body without even asking. That is how it works when there is clarity and God vision. There is not even the need to ask, and it is fulfilled. There does not need to be fighting. So rid the thought content of the necessity of the idea that needs, that manifesting needs to be done that way. It actually very much gets in the way of it's thought pollution that affects the functioning of the body, the apparent body. So that is the assignment, and that is a huge assignment. So it needs to be practiced. It needs to be God manifested. So take the God power and God manifest that assignment, along with the other assignments, to stop criticizing others that are only yourself, only oneself. All seeming others are only oneself as God. There are no others. There are no others. There is only God alone. Eternally, always. God absolute. That is you. I. That is you. Not the body, not all of the thoughts, not the fear, not the anger, not the hostilities, not the exclusive love, not all of the seeming emotions or whatever, not anything you've been taught. You as your true self cannot be taught anything. Because you as God already know everything. As yourself, as God. It only appears that one needs to be taught anything. So implement that seeming teaching. Activated in God consciousness. God manifests it. There is no need to contextualize God manifesting as fighting, as criticism, as conflict, as any of that dreaming. Wake up out of it and find the true self as always already awake. God never sleeps. If God slept, the whole God omniverse would fall apart. God is always awake. God omniverse within, God absolute. God absolute always is. I am that. I. I am the eternal light of the absolute reality, in which there are no shadows. God alone exists. God alone is reality. I am God. I am God. I am God. God omnipotence. God omnipresence. God omniscience. Om. God alone exists. God alone is reality. God alone exists. God alone is reality. God alone exists. God alone is reality. God blessings. God blessings. God blessings.